Today we are reading chapter 31 of Paola Santiago and the River of Tears by Taylor K. Mejia. Today my niece Esther is going to be reading with us. Chapter 31 starts on page 329. Chapter 31, the title is Lonely in a Crowd. Ooh. Okay, are we ready? Are we ready, class?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, chapter 31. Are you going to read? The cave as the rock walls disintegrated and water began to pour in from all sides. Trust me, said Pao. This is how we get out. If I'm wrong and this is the end, Pao thought, taking a deep breath just before the water closed over her head. At least we did what we came to do. The surge of water carried them upward, and Pao did her best to keep her eyes open so she could watch what happened to the void. The dome was gone. She saw green light flicker and die across the ruined landscape below. Faint white clouds drifted alongside them like jellyfish. Those were the ahogados. Pao realized their peaceful faces turned toward the light that was just becoming visible above. And not only them, Pao also saw chupacabras, lechuzas, even manos, pachanos floating up. Their spirits freed from the malevolence that had been holding them prisoner for so long. Pao gripped Emma's arm and Dante's, and at last she closed her eyes, focusing on holding her breath for one more second. Just one more. When their heads finally broke the surface of the Gila, they swam for the nearest bank, and Pao didn't think about ankle snagging branches or cold pockets or the dangers of invisible currents. She only thought of home. Emma was struggling, and Pao tried to pull her along, but in the end, it was Franco who heaved her onto the riverbank, while Dante, already standing in the shallows, took Pao's arm as they sank into the gritty sand, coughing and sputtering, but alive. There was a screeching sound and then a clunk, like a heavy steel door slamming shut. Pao peered into the river just in time to see a massive, dark mouth close just beneath the water surface. The solstice was over. The pearl had been destroyed. The rift was sealed. Pao felt a tug in her chest, a phantom of the pain she'd experienced when the key had drained her. But when the portal could no longer be seen, she felt a weightlessness too, a sense of relief. Sitting up, Pao looked at her exhausted friends spread out along the bank. Its familiar white sand, dripping black moss, seeming positively ordinary compared to the horrors they'd seen. She felt close to her comrades, but also separate somehow. When she'd held the pearl, she'd seen the potential of what she could be, and she'd given it up. She was in the morning, while everyone else was waking from a nightmare. Pao felt a little lonely as her eyes roved over them, but she tried to shake it off, to find joy in the sensation of solid ground beneath her, to remember why she belonged with them. That was when she realized Bruto was nowhere to be seen. Where are we? Emma asked. Pao blinked back the tears in her eyes. There was no way to explain Bruto to her, any more than she could explain her sense of loss at the closing of the void. The rift opening wasn't too far from the Niños' camp. Pao said through her journey between the two had seemed endless. I think this is the same place I went in. Franco nodded, getting to his feet. Wait, the what now? Emma asked, looking a little dazed, and Pao suddenly felt overwhelmed by how long they'd been apart. How much had happened to both of them in the interim? It's a long story, Pao said, trying to smile. I have a couple of those myself, Emma replied. But you're okay? Pao asked. Everyone's okay? Dante stepped up between them and put an arm around each of their shoulders. We're together, he said. It's a start. Pao smiled for real this time, basking in the feeling of being a trio again. It helped fill the hole where her shining future had been. So, which way do we go to get back to camp? Dante asked her. There's no more key? Pao said, shrugging. Dante and Emma looked confused, but Franco's eyes snapped to hers. You found it. They were the first words he had spoken. Pao nodded. In some ways, she'd had it all along. It was destroyed when I went through the rift. Something settled in Franco's expression, and for a moment, Pao could see the hundreds of years he'd lived, even though his face still looked 16. It's all right, he said at last. I know the way. As they headed toward the Niños' camp, Pao couldn't help but crane her neck and look at the sky, wondering where Ondina and her mother were now, where Bruto was. What would happen to them next? Even the pearl in all its infinite power and wisdom hadn't been able to tell her that. Maybe it's for the best, she thought. She'd already seen enough impossible things for one summer, probably for a whole lifetime. Compared to the route Pao had taken, following the flashlight beam with all its twists and turns, Franco's sure steps were almost anticlimactic. Pao and Emma walked behind the boys shoulder to shoulder, taking comfort in each other's presence. Dante seemed to understand, and besides, Pao could plainly see how much he wanted to emulate Franco. It makes sense, Pao thought. Franco's basically the soccer captain of the cactus field. She would keep the joke to herself for now, though. Surviving the ghost and monster-filled underworld deserved at least an hour of ceasefire. Beside her, Emma's brow was furrowed, her lips drawn in a frown. There was so much Pao wanted to ask her about the details of her disappearance, about Franco, La Llorona, and Ondina, and about how Emma had ended up in the glass palace. For once, though, she decided to let her curiosity rest. Are you okay? She asked simply, and Emma's face relaxed. I am now, she said. For a while, I thought... Emma swallowed hard, her gaze on the horizon. I thought I was never going to get out of there. I never would have stopped until we found you, Pao said. And it was true. As terrible as the ordeal had been, she would have gone through worse for Emma. She would have done anything. That's what I kept telling the ghost lady, Emma said. I think she put me under glass because she was sick of hearing about you. Her tone was teasing, but her eyes were still haunted. Pao flashed back to Emma and the prism, unconscious, helpless. Pao had been so close to letting her down, to letting them all down. Hey, Emma said, bumping her shoulder into Pao's. It's over. We're okay. Thanks to you. Pao smiled gratefully. She'd missed this, the way best friends knew just what to say. The noises of camp drifted toward them, and Pao was suddenly apprehensive. She'd escaped from the Niños who had left her tied to a bed. What kind of welcome would she receive now? Franco? 3 boys emerged from a knot of cacti, friends of Sal's, Pao remembered, looking like they'd been in a scuffle. But whatever had caused the ripped t-shirts and dirt-smudged cheeks was forgotten when Franco took a step toward them. Is it really you? One of the boys asked. When Franco grinned, Pao got a glimpse of what all the fuss was about. He had a kind of magnetism, a raucous, irreverent joy that was peeking through the layers of fatigue and stress. That depends, he said. Who won the fight? I only reveal my resurrected form to winners, you know. The boys ran at him then, the whooping, joyful, tackling him and almost taking him down. Franco was exhausted, but he grappled with them anyway, laughing and tussling their hair as they peppered him with questions. It was like this, with ecstatic boys hanging from his arm and shoulders, that the presumed dead former leader of Los Niños de la Luz made his entrance. Pao realized quickly, arriving in his wake, that she'd been silly to worry about her own reception. In the tail of Franco's blazing comet, she was nothing but a chunk of dull space rock. He was a true hero, and Pao had never been so happy to be nobody special. With his famous weapon and reputation as the boy who'd gone down fighting for Naomi, Dante was getting his share of adoration too. He stood slightly apart from Franco by the massive fire pit, looking sheepish but pleased with himself. For once, Pao wasn't jealous. He deserved this moment. She and Emma, whom no one here knew, stayed at the fringes, shoulders still touching, watching it all from a distance. Pao? Emma asked after a few minutes had passed. Yeah? It was my fault. What was? Pao turned to face her friend, who was worrying her lower lip with her teeth, a telltale sign that something was bothering her. Everything that happened to us. I wasn't just taken. I went with her. The ghost girl. Your friend. I went with her. Ondina? Pat asked, nonplussed. What do you mean? Emma took a deep breath. It wasn't the first time I'd seen her, but I thought she was just a girl from Mesa on a family trip. She and I made plans to meet before I was supposed to join you guys. I was going to show her the river, but when I got there, things got weird. Pal, processing the words, didn't answer right away, but Emma could never let a silence stretch very long, and she spoke into it too quickly. She started talking about souls, and I thought she was just a weird hippie, but then he showed up. I pointed at Franco, now slinging his arm around a thunderstruck Marisa. He told me not to trust her and started asking questions about my ring, and by then I just wanted to get out of there. But all these ghost zombies or whatever showed up and dragged me into this river, and I don't understand, Pau said, feeling dizzy. Why would you arrange to meet a girl from Mesa who was on a family trip? Emma's cheeks went pink. I don't know. She was at the club after tennis practice and she said she wanted to see the Gila. I told her I knew a place and you didn't tell me? This seemed like the least of the worries right now, but for some reason it was the thing that stung Pau the most. Emma had been making other friends without her? That the friend in question turned out to be the ghost of a drowned girl looking for a matching soul was beside the point. Pau, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Pau felt her temper start to rise, but then she thought about her river dreams and the strange boy-girl, whatever that had been going between her and Dante lately. There were things she hadn't told Emma either. She exhaled slowly. It's okay. Ondina would have done anything to come back to life, Pau said. And Franco was looking for a key to get him into the rift. It wasn't your fault. Just an epically bad, wrong place, wrong time situation. So you're not mad at me? Pau shook her head, and she meant it. Just no more secrets, okay? From now on, we tell each other everything. Deal, Emma said, sticking out her hand. They used the special handshake they'd made up in drama class last year, ending with the double pinky swear. I have about 6 million questions to ask you, though, Pau said when they'd finished. You wouldn't be you if you didn't, Emma said, shaking her head and linking her arms with Pau's. At least the knot around Franco and Dante began to loosen, and the niños noticed Pau. Sal approached her first, and she found that despite everything she had gone through, despite the emptiness still lingering in her chest, her smile came easily. Maybe that's how healing worked, a little at a time. You kept your promise, he said, and Pau felt her smile grow bigger. I did my best. Sal put his chubby hands in hers and squeezed her before smiling shyly at Emma. I remember your bike, he said to her. Purple, right? Purple, Emma agreed, smiling back. Naomi took Sal's place when he scampered off to examine Dante's club. Her expression was unreadable as she sized up the two girls, giving Emma a nod that almost passed for friendly before turning to Pau. Guess I underestimated you, Naomi said after a long moment. Sorry I ran off. Sorry I tied you to a cot. Yeah, that was kind of rude. They both laughed. The soft laugh of two kids who had seen too much. Together, Naomi, Pau, and Emma looked toward the fire at Marisa. She had tucked herself under Franco's arm, her hair loose and wavy, her smile positively radiant. We all thought he was dead, Naomi said, her voice hushed and almost reverent. Seeing him now, it's a miracle, Pau said, reaching over to squeeze Emma's hand. Complicated, Naomi offered, shaking her head. What was he doing down there anyway? Emma turned to her. She wanted to use us, our souls, to bring her daughter back. Franco could have escaped. He was captured trying to save me. Her eyes were sullen than Pau had ever seen them. I'm sorry, she said. It's not your fault, Naomi said, no trace of thorniness in her tone. We've been fighting the rift for a long time. It's insidious, and Franco knew what he was up against before better than anyone. Believe me, he didn't do anything he didn't decide to do. He didn't know La Llorona was still a threat, added Pao. La Llorona? Naomi echoed, shaking her head. I can't believe it was her this whole time. Never underestimate a mother with a grudge, Pao said, darkly looking at Franco. Did he feel bad for his mistake? For his role in creating the monster La Llorona became? How much would he tell the niños about that? Naomi smirked, then asked in all seriousness, what's next for you? Home, Emma blurted out. And soon, my parents must be going crazy with worry. She nudged Pao's shoulders with hers. I'm going to go see if Dante's almost ready, okay? Pao nodded and stayed with Naomi, who was considering her with a different kind of expression. Could it be respect? You know, Naomi said, you wouldn't be the first kid to walk into this cactus field and never come out. We could use someone like you. But La Llorona is gone, Pao started. Naomi dismissed her words with a wave. Doesn't mean there won't be other threats. There's still work to be done. For instance, we don't know what the rift's closing means. We need to do research, conduct experiments and stuff. Pao smiled. You know how to sweet talk a girl. Yeah, well, you're not that hard to tempt. For a minute, like she was holding the pearl again, the future spooled out in front of Pao. She could live here, wear the black patchwork uniform of Los Niños, studying the rift and the effect of its closing on the cactus fields. The Gila in herself. She could stay almost 13 forever and train and fight and be around people who understood what she'd been through, who had felt the rift pulling on them and decided not to run from it. Naomi watched her like she could read the thoughts swirling behind her eyes. I went home once, Naomi said, her voice sounding ancient and weary. Or I tried to, anyway. What happened? Pao asked. Naomi shrugged. Didn't take. After everything that happened to me here, sitting in science class felt like I was living a life that didn't fit anymore. What about your family? Was it Pao's imagination, or did a shadow flit across Naomi's face at the question? In any case, it was gone before she answered. They were better off without me, she said simply. Even if I'd stayed, I wasn't the daughter they'd lost. I wasn't the daughter they wanted back. Pao didn't know what to say to that, and Naomi didn't seem to expect a response. But her words wormed their way somewhere deep into Pao, and she knew she wouldn't forget them anytime soon, no matter what she decided. She had more questions for Naomi, but Dante and Emma returned them then. The club mercifully returned to its foldable chancla form and stowed in Dante's back pocket. Some of its shine was still in his smile, though, and Pao thought it probably always would be. They had all changed, but what would they do about it now? Could they resume their ordinary lives at the Riverside Palace and the country club? Ready to go home? Dante asked, slinging an arm around Pao's shoulder, unconsciously mirroring Marisa's and Franco's poses across the fire. She almost shrugged him off, embarrassed in front of Emma, but there was no need. Emma's smile at both of them was so bright it blasted away Pao's worries. Pao had chosen the right future, the one full of friends and family, and no matter what else it held, there would definitely be more comic book and junk food fest. That was enough certainty for now. I've never been more ready, Emma said. She would be the daughter her parents wanted back. Of that, Pao had no doubt. Pao? She asked. You ready? No way, Dante yelled, dropping his arm. Pao followed his gaze, wondering what could possibly be more important to him than going home and saying nothing at first. Then a black bundle of fur and teeth and two large paws barreled lopsidedly toward her through the desert dust. I already saw the next sentence for chapter 32. We'll read it tomorrow.
Bruno's gonna